Well, good morning, and first of all, I'd like to thank the FAFSA Completion Project colleagues and Lumina Foundation for inviting us here. Yet one other opportunity for us to network with our colleagues around the country so that we can share our challenges and our best practices. When I ran into a few people, old friends, and met several new friends, everyone seemed to say, well, we're unique, we're different, we're different, we're different. And the beauty of this project is that we are all very unique. Each one of us comes to this table, to this ballroom, with different experiences from our districts, but yet with a common goal of assisting our young people in getting into college. Miami-Dade County Public Schools is where I hail from, and we always say we're quite unique as well. We're the 4th largest school system in the nation. 67% of our population is Hispanic, 23% African American, 8 white, and 2 other. 72% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. 21 are special education, 21%. 23% are ESOL students. We have 435 traditional schools, 55 senior high schools, and our largest senior high school has 4,129 students. Currently in our district this year, we have 24,844 seniors. It's been an interesting project over the few years, and we look forward to being able to really share some of our challenges and where we've come from the first year of implementing this project to where we are today.
Good morning. My name's Karen Luby. I'm from Austin Independent School District. We're in the Texas capital, and all eyes are on us a lot of the time. We have similar demographics to Miami. We have 65% approximately who are Hispanic. We have a large immigrant population. We have high-performing schools and low-performing schools. We have 13 high schools that are a traditional model. We've got 2 early college high schools that we've just started. We have about 67% of our students who are going on to a post-secondary institution after high school. However, there is a very large gap between our white high-income students who go and our Hispanic and lower-income students who go, just as Lumina was showing us earlier. So we really believe that the FAFSA is a way to have that conversation with everyone.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Nilsson, and I come from Bellingham Public Schools, right up in the very northwest corner of Washington State. We're about 20 miles south of the Canadian border. I guess a suburban school district kind of located in a very rural county. So our school district has about 12,000 students. We graduate about 1,000 seniors a year out of 3 traditional high schools and 1 alternative school. Our demographics, again, like everyone else, very diverse. So of those 3 schools that we have, one of them is a very high-performing high school across the street, literally, from Western Washington University. They have about a 7 or 8% free and reduced lunch rate. The high school that I currently work at across town has 1,500 students in it. 34 languages spoken in the building, 48% free and reduced lunch rate. Very different for only being 10 miles apart. When we joined the project 3 years ago, we had kind of a baseline data rate that was driven out of that high-performing high school. We are thrilled with what the project's been able to do for our school district because our rate over the last 3 years of FAFSA completion has risen about 21%.
Wow.
So.
Awesome. So how did you get started? What were the first steps you took in building your project?
Our journey may not be unique, I don't know. I sat on the National Office for School Counselor Advocacy Advisory Board at its first inception, and when the project first put in the 20 initial sites, Pat Martin had sent out an email and said, hey, listen up, it's not very often that we get a heads up and about these kinds of initiatives. So when that happened, I spent my spring break watching the Department of Ed website to get into the study. And when we did this initially, the school district I work for said, okay, but only at your high school, Michelle. We know that you can pull it off only at your high school. So our first year in the project, it literally was one high school. And then you started to have the conversation about, well, how come not us? Wait a minute. And so over the 2 years' time, we were able to bring in the entire school district. So our journey started literally with me. I did the data, I did the push out of information, I did the training of the counselors, I did the marketing of all the stuff. It was a very small program. Now that we have all of the high schools in, we have a very diverse team that takes over different aspects of the project. So a marketing and communications piece and outreach to more social organizations, to politics, that type of thing, the training of the counselors, the recruiting and working with our local college access people. And so it's evolved over to a much larger project as it needed to be.
I'll admit that I had a research agenda in the beginning. We've been having the college preparation and access conversation in Austin, and I had been looking at some really cool research about influences on post-secondary enrollment, and that just happened to be done in Chicago, where Greg was, and we wanted to emulate those studies, and I kept looking, and they had FAFSA data. Well, we didn't have FAFSA data, so about that time, the call came out for the FAFSA pilot project, and I did have a little heads up through our Smaller Learning Communities grant. So I applied for it immediately. At the same time, unbeknownst to me, our Director of Guidance and Counseling also applied, but I had hit the button quickly, and so I got it. So anyway, she was a fabulous partner in that first year because we were learning how to pull the data down, and she was looking at it and trying to communicate the findings with the counselors. And that year it was just baseline data. In the second year, we had new superintendent coming in, and in the third year, we had a reduction in force. So we've had changing players all along the way. And one thing I will tell you is that everyone gets to play a new role in this work. Because I am a research and evaluator, but I'm also an advocate and sometimes acting project director. The other piece of the way we got started is we have a very dear friend at the Chamber of Commerce, our Vice President of Educational Initiatives, and he had been looking at this at the same time we were, and so he is our champion advocate, and we have a really strong relationship with our chamber, and so that's kind of how we got started. It's just, we didn't have a plan, and we've had changing players, but it can be done.
Thank you. You mentioned the superintendent. Well, I come from a district where, you know, of course, we have the most outstanding superintendent in the United States, and he is a person who really believes that data empowers all of the stakeholders if we really want to affect change in our schools. So when this opportunity came available, and some lovely ladies such as Pat Martin, and we soon met Dr. Joyce, really began speaking more about this, it just seemed to be a wonderful, logical fit. When we went to our first convening conference in Texas, I remember how jealous I was of some of the other sites where they said, our mayor is on board. We have this wonderful, campaign. And I thought, okay, there are 37 municipalities. I have 37 mayors. How are we going to make this a true community-wide campaign? But again, our best practices in sharing with one another, we have been fortunate that we are entering into educational compacts with all of those municipalities and getting that, wonderful community buy-in. Because I oversee student services, and it includes school counseling programs, among many, many other things, this is something that we've owned. This is the kind of work that isn't new for school counselors and for our college assistance program advisors. But when we signed on, quite frankly, it was just logical I should be that point person, until I realized about the big data component. I am not a researcher, I am not a data analyst, and I am so thankful that this project brought together the people who really understand what upload, downloads, rollover, and all these other things I don't understand are a part of this, because I'm all about the program and what we're doing to impact this initiative.
So another off-script question. What was the biggest misstep you made in getting things rolling, if you're not afraid to share? Did you make one? And if you did, can you let these guys know so maybe they don't do it?
I'm proud of failure. So again, it was designating myself as the district administrator, as the point person, and my colleague, Mr. Castaneda, who you'll hear from later, is about 40 miles away in our same county, but in his offices, and thinking that I could do this. So I really want to express my recommendation that the data person is truly a data person or a researcher and not a programmatic person. So that was our first learning experience.
And I think that misstep is similar in Austin. As I've said earlier, I'm the data person and I've kind of owned the project. I've been trying to hand off larger pieces to other folks. We're not quite there yet. As I said, we're starting over with a new team each year. Fortunately, our district has that college culture theme, and it's in the FAFSA completion is in our strategic plan. The FAFSA completion is in our principles evaluation. It's just a little indicator, but it is there. But being in the research and evaluation office and trying to educate people on the data and the recommendations that go with that, and being an advocate to put them with the different partners in the community is, it's a full-time job, and I think it's important. I think it matters. What we have begun to realize is that we need to make others understand that it matters to them. Those teachers, they need to understand why it matters, and it's not something that rests on the counselor's shoulders. That's another misstep that we've made, is it's still seen as the counselor and our college advisors, two people on our campuses. That's their job, and it's not. It's all of our jobs, and that's where, when I mentioned earlier, we need to step out of our traditional roles and facilitate that in whatever way we can. That's just what we're going to have to do. However, I've learned that I can't be the one that owns it, and we need to spread the love a little bit.
I would echo the data component, and I can't say enough. You all will hear from Charlie later about data, and Charlie will become your best friend in the project. Trust me. But one thing that I think we did that just is because of the nature that the group of people who were working on the project believed so strongly in education for all kids, no matter where they come from and how they come to us, was assuming that everybody in our district had that same notion. And so we kind of launched into the project, and it was a small group of individuals who were sort of leading the way and carrying the torch for education for all kids and completing the FAFSA for all families, only to come to that first season of filing the FAFSA to realize that a lot of our colleagues were going, are you crazy? These kids are not going to go to college. And I think that was the first point that we sort of stepped back and went, okay, wait a second. This is not only about completing the FAFSA. This is now about educating our core of people who is on the ground, delivering this message to kids every day, and sort of making that assumption that we all had shared beliefs was probably our first misstep, and having to kind of go back and retrain and ask people, why not? Why would not every student under our care file the FAFSA at the end of their high school career?
You had some training of the trainers to do at your institution. And so when you went about setting up your team, did you pick and choose people, or did you say, well, I need these positions represented? Or did you pick the people where you're going to get the least resistance and most buy-in?
We kind of did both. So we picked people that we knew were going to agree with the project and help carry it forward, but we also had to go in and pick people that we knew could make connections. So in the area that I live in is a very traditional system, and there's a hierarchy of who can speak to who and how you cross over, and you have to be careful of how you do that. So when we chose our people, we picked one person from each of our 4 high schools that was going to carry the torch and sort of be the cheerleader in their building. And then we picked really key people who had the power, for lack of a better word, to tell our counselors, these are the trainings that are provided, and you need to come to the table. And then we picked our data expert after my complete failure at it the first year, who knew what upload and download meant, and when they said that it needed to be a certain file, he knew how to do that and I don't. Those type of things. And then I think the most important key player is that we, in our conversation, stumbled across a local college access provider who has been the saving grace of our program. Without her, I don't know what we would do, because she's the one who helps bring all the other players to the table. Our trained volunteers, our connections to the mayor's office, our connection to the universities, that type of thing, to bring a team of what started with about 6 folks to now a team of about 40 who are regularly at our FAFSA project meetings.
That's great. But you guys, yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that as well. One thing, starting last year, we really started to evolve as far as putting together our FAFSA teams together. An unlikely but very strong sponsor stepped forward, and that was our high school superintendent. And he really understood the need for the FAFSA. And what he did was he took away some of those structures of communication, because we do have those communication paths in AISD. And what he said was, you are free to communicate with all of my principals, and I will be telling them that you will be communicating with them. And we've gone out to their schools and had them bring in their leadership teams, and we've looked at the data. We looked at FAFSA, Postsecondary Enrollment, our high school exit survey, SAT, ACT. We looked at trends across all of those data sources, FAFSA being one piece of that, and they started having that conversation on their campuses about what their model was going to look like, and they could tailor it towards those needs. And but the key piece in that was having the high school superintendent say, this is important. You know, I'm not going to mandate how you get it done, but make sure that your campus plan fits the needs of your students. And so just having that advocate and some freedom of communication really did help. And our teams do look different on every campus.
A wise lady told me once that to remember that this is our playground, but let other people play in our sandbox. So, as I said earlier, this has been something that has not been new to student services professionals, to school counselors and college assistance program advisors who are at every one of our senior high schools. But we do recognize that this is something we couldn't do on our own, and valued the fact that we had so many wonderful college partnerships. One of our college partnerships came about as a result of a grant that one of our community partners, the Ed Fund, had. And part of that grant was bringing together community providers who had the same vision with college access. As I listened earlier, they listed several of these agencies, organizations, et cetera: higher education, parent groups, College Summit, AVID, U Aspire, Access. All of these folks come together monthly at the table with that shared vision, strategic planning, collective impact, looking at a common goal, and the FAFSA was a common goal. But for our school sites, going beyond the fact that it's part of the job and the evaluation of some of our professionals at the school site, most of our school districts know that our superintendents are where everything begins, but just get one good school board member on board, and this will definitely be something that everyone supports and buys into. So that was very important to us when one of our school board members really got on board, being an advocate and a spokesperson, making sure that throughout the community this was on everybody's agenda. It was on the ticker and the school system's website, that we pulled together and had that other advocate that was also important to our team.
Right. Who are some other champions, and how would you describe the impact of having the champion? Or are you trying to be more grassroots about it and build up a bigger groundswell of support for the work?
In our end, I have to say that works both ways. You know, there is the grassroots, and that's where, you know, the money, you know, meets the road, if you will, in the sense that making sure that all of our students and families fully understand. But then you need it coming from the other direction as well, with our Chamber of Commerce, with our local mayors, and as I had mentioned earlier, and particularly, and my colleagues here, I know around the country, Univision has been a phenomenal supporter of this initiative. I know in Texas, I know in California, and several other places, and they literally have devoted weeks to this particular project, town hall meetings, but the step-by-step pieces that are going on for our parents. And it's not just limited to our Hispanic population. So I think it's both. It's everything. It's the top-down, it's the bottom-up, and it's just the whole community wrapping their arms around this culture.
I'm going to echo the applause for the support of Univision. In Austin, they've hosted town hall meetings. They've had lots of media that they've sponsored, you know, television, radio, are the main ones. They've been a wonderful, wonderful partner, and they just stepped up and volunteered. As soon as our chamber partners said, hey, you know, we've got this FAFSA initiative going, they've been wonderful. Another one that stepped up for us is Texas Guaranteed, and they primarily work in educational loans, but they're the ones that have been training all of our volunteers that man our financial aid Saturdays, and they also developed our curriculum, and they're doing the training for the counselors and the teachers on those curriculum. And they've been a wonderful asset to our project, and we couldn't have done that without them.
My question would be, how did you make that connection, or who, was it your superintendent that went out and did that, and get that partnership?
About 5 or 6 years ago, we started meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, all of the local school districts, Austin and the surrounding suburbs, and they were counselors that would come to those meetings, and we would talk about college readiness and college access, and it's great interest of the Chamber. As the Lumina Foundation showed some slides earlier, in Austin, we have thousands of jobs in the high-tech industry and in the health industry that we cannot fill with qualified applicants. And so they were the ones that started hosting the meetings, and it was, they began as kind of a focus group. What can we do to help local school districts? They've expanded in knowing that we needed some of the higher level leadership positions there. That group now has superintendents and school principals sitting on it, as well as the school counselors. The chamber in those meetings would invite interested guests or partners or prospective partners to sit in on those conversations. And as TG came, Univision came, we have some private contractors willing to build like a counselor portal system to house the data that counselors can run reports for different groups of kids, just all kinds of different people. As the chamber connection, they were inviting them and then making that introduction with the school districts that sat on that meeting. And we used to meet about once a month. Now it's about every 6 to 8 weeks, but they made the introductions.
So in our instance, there is a group in Washington called the Advocates for Multicultural Student Achievement, and those folks are a grassroots effort of team of people that are local colleges, high school counselors, the Chamber of Commerce, politicians, all of that type of thing. And we were able to end up with a counselor on the board of that association, as well as one of our executive directors, kind of the assistant to the superintendent. And that's really where a lot of our connections came from, and the doors opened, were conversations at this grassroots effort that would meet once a month and talk about issues for students of color and college access. And by making those connections, we're fortunate that in Bellingham we have a superintendent who believes in what he calls organic leadership. And so if you were making connections, you could go out and speak with the mayor's office, with whoever we were able to connect with, to begin initiating some of those programs. And those were the areas that really built the community groundswell that we were able to, come to the conference, and I think it was Philadelphia who was putting flyers in their, the DSHS checks about the FAFSA completion and get some of those ideas, and we could come back to the table and talk with that group about ideas that we'd heard at the conference that we were able to bring to Bellingham and spread the wealth.
Great. So going back, you had a really interesting comment about needing to bring some teachers along who said, well, these kids aren't college material, that kind of thing. So number one, I'm wondering about whether you two experienced that as well, and then what you did to try to bring them along or leave them behind.
Do you want? Okay, we're still bringing teachers along. We have started with our economics teachers that are teaching the curriculum. There's certain teachers, we also have high school advisory classes, and each teacher has a group of, about 15 students that they have an advisory period on. Some schools use that as grades monitoring, which is very important if we want them to pass their classes and graduate on time. A lot of them do social emotional issue curriculum. But then there's a lot of those advisory periods that talk a lot about post-secondary enrollment, the steps to take. And so we're trying to provide materials and information to the teachers so that some of the advisory periods in those high schools are focused on the FAFSA, focused on college applications, focused on career exploration. I don't know to what extent those things are being implemented. Unfortunately, we no longer evaluate our advisory programs. So, but I'm acting on good faith that is starting to spread, and that's a good question to explore for this year to see how that's going.
Yeah.
I think that we've all experienced that same tough sale with some of our teachers. And I know that one of the things that we've done several things, and, again, it's only a cardiac assessment as to whether it's been successful. But we do have a freshman orientation program in each of our schools, and it's actually a semester course, and part of that course kind of introduces the students to, the whole career college pathway, the steps they need to take, and things like that. This is implemented by a classroom teacher. So as we started expanding their role in understanding financial aid, what students have to do, we've experienced a little bit more successive approximation to the desired behavior. And then we have our city post-secondary program. And with that particular program, basically the teachers are doing a lot of the driving of this entire ship in that course for, college access. It's not only learning about why rigor and curriculum is important and what they're doing and creating that college-going culture, but helping them benchmark along the way the different things that need to take place, such as the FAFSA financial aid process, et cetera. So we're opening more doors for teachers, but we're still nowhere near where we need to be with bringing in teachers for this particular initiative.
Tell me whether you had a college career readiness agenda in advance of this project, and how this project really rounded out your agenda, if you did have one.
So in Bellingham, we're on our third superintendent in 5 years. And 3 superintendents ago, before he left, he came up with the college career citizenship for everyone and then promptly retired. So there was nothing really in place, and the new superintendent came in and embraced that, but focused a lot on pre-K, kindergarten type things, which is still sort of where Bellingham is at. And we still have a long ways to go, to put it briefly. There's just a lot of work to do to bring that pre-K program all the way up to the high school, and what happens in those 12 years until they get there.
When I started in AISD in 2000, we had a brand new Gear Up grant. It was gaining early awareness and readiness for undergraduate programs. And that grant lasted 6 years. At the same time, we also had Michael and Susan Dell Foundation funding that paid for a college and career advisor for each high school that primarily worked with seniors to complete all of those steps towards post-secondary enrollment. Interestingly enough, we also had smaller learning communities grants over the years that paid for an additional person that we really used to focus on college access and college preparation. And I'm using college to cover all types of post-secondary institutions. The interesting thing that has happened over the years is that those discretionary funds have dried up. But it's been really interesting to see the principals of those schools figure out in a really tough funding climate how to continue funding those types of positions, because they found that it's really, really important. And so I will say that part of the work that continues on after those grant funds end has resulted in seeing some changes in the discussions, the changes in post-secondary enrollment, and deciding that it was important enough to use some local funding somehow, or Title I funding, to help at some of those schools. So we've been inching along. 10 years ago, our post-secondary enrollment rate was 55%. We took a dip in, it went to 66% in 2009. The class of 2010, it went back down to 62%. We also had a FAFSA completion rate of 29% in that first year. That's our baseline data. Last year, we had a FAFSA completion rate of 54%, and we also saw a spike in our post-secondary enrollments. It's 67.6%. And I really believe that financial aid piece has made a difference. We also looked at our post-secondary kids, our kids who became enrolled last year for the class of 2011. 84% of those who were enrolled completed a FAFSA. So we've been trying to continue that conversation, but I think just making it matter to people is really the key, and we will find a way to get it done.
Our district has just one goal in the district strategic plan. Years ago, previous superintendents, there were many. There's just one goal. That's student achievement, and it's measured by grade level appropriate knowledge and mastery, having a post-secondary plan, graduating, and successfully entering higher education or the workforce. So our plan dictates where we're headed. Unfortunately, it's tough along the way to motivate students to look at that ultimate goal when they feel that there is no hope or chance for them to be able to attain a college education. And, you know, really and truly, the FAFSA completion project has helped them understand through this entire process that there is light at the end of that tunnel. Florida is one of the states where every one of our schools is graded, and 50% of our grade comes from our high-stakes test, but the other 50% comes from other variables. And really, those variables have a lot to do with the educational pathway for our students to college, dual enrollment courses, advanced academic courses, the low cohort of students graduating, being college ready based on the assessment tests. But once again, you can't motivate students early on to take this pathway if we're not providing them with some reasonable goals, some reasonable alternatives that can reduce some of those barriers to college. And we truly believe that financial aid, financial assistance, and the FAFSA completion is one of those projects that can actually help them reach their dreams.
That's great. Tell me about your success. What did you do that you would transmit to these guys? Say, if there's one thing you have to do to make your program a success, this is what I did, and this is what I want to share with you.
Well, I'll say what we did. I really think that our College Access Community Partnership has been one of the most successful things that's happened in Miami-Dade County Public Schools over many years. We own our turf, but sometimes we have difficulties really embracing others who have a shared vision, and the whole collective impact, bringing all these folks together. Every one of the meetings, more and more community participants become involved in this, and our education fund, our local education fund, has really been the lead on this, and we think that it's been one of the most successful things that we've pulled together, is that collective impact.
So from the data perspective, having the FAFSA data is really a major contribution in being successful with kids. And I am proud to say that even our counselors, our touchy-feely counselors that don't want to look at data, are saying the same things. The other thing, it's wonderful to have the FAFSA data, especially real-time FAFSA data, where you can track the progress of your kids. It can't be in isolation. You have to look at other information along with that so that you can advise and counsel kids and keep them motivated. So don't use your FAFSA data in isolation. Use your other data as well. But also the timely sharing of that information is just the greatest gift of this project, and it's really what makes us successful in AISD. They can look at the kids, you can see that they've submitted it. You can see that they have errors, and you need to go back and say, you're not quite done yet, you need to go fill out some more information. You can see which kids are completing it and which kids are not. And you can probably look at those students, your counselors know who they are, and they can probably take some pretty good guesses on why they haven't completed it yet. But having that information and being able to do really strategic outreach has been the key to some of our success. And I think the value of this project is not just the data, it's what you do with it. And spreading that message has been, I think, really important for all of us.
I think that our most successful piece of this happened last year when our district committed to having College Goal Sunday or FAFSA completion events at each of our high schools. And we were able to invite folks into the high schools. We did some on Sunday afternoons after church. We did some at, in the evenings. We actually went to the Catholic Church and held it in their gymnasium at one point. But in doing so, it really became a collective community effort where we had over 150 volunteers from tax preparers, financial planners, retired school counselors, other retired educators, the universities. We happen to, in Bellingham, be fortunate that we have a four-year university, a technical college, and a community college right there. So there are a lot of resources available for financial aid professionals, trained mentors at each of those universities, that type of thing, who could come in and help us. And we were able to partner with NELA to write a grant for interpreters. So at each of our events, we had interpreters for Spanish, Punjabi, Vietnamese, Korean, Russian, and Chinese that were present, and they at times didn't have families that were there, but when they did, it was super empowering and just kind of a beautiful sight to see those families be able to look and get their EFC and know what happened. Mm-hmm. The outcome of being part of the FAFSA project, as Karen was saying, is being able to have the data to go back and follow up. So I really think that in Bellingham, our first year we had a lot of kids in the 3 column where there were errors. We didn't quite know what to do with them. And then our second go around with that, we were able to help those kids clean up and moved the majority of them to earning an EFC. And I really give credit to that for our large increases in the number of kids who completed.
That's great. So I wanted to open it up to questions from the group. You're going to have a chance to talk with these ladies for the next couple days. They're going to go in deeper into building a plan and building a team and all of that. But you have them. They're a little captive audience right now. Wondering if you've got any questions.
Austin, you talked a little bit about some grant funding that helped you be able to implement. Can all three of you address, our school district has been through 3 years in a row of workforce reduction, probably like a lot of your school districts. How do we fund this?
We've all been in the same position with reduction salaries, workforce reduction, et cetera. And, fortunately, our principals are now able to purchase the positions they choose to purchase. And because of, I think, the community-wide push, the superintendent's push, different mayors' push of FAFSA completion and kids going to college, I'm happy to say of the 55 schools, 51 have gone on to continue to purchase their college assistance program advisor. But when we talk about money to implement the project, if I didn't have the college assistance program advisors in the school sites, this would continue to be a function of our school counselors. It's something they've done and always had to do. The key for us with promoting this and hosting the FAFSA completion nights at every senior high school, the Saturday events, all these things, we're really getting our community to come on board and bring their resources to the tables, because we didn't have the money for our posters, we didn't have the money for our ads, we didn't have the money for our public service announcements, but we didn't have to pay for those because of the community coming together. We have not received any grant to assist us with this one.
And as I mentioned, our grants ended and we're sustaining. The community partners through the Chamber of Commerce has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars supporting not just Austin ISD, but the surrounding areas in the FAFSA work. All of the radio, television ads, newspaper inserts, so on and so forth. And I'll be providing some examples of those later. That's how we've done a lot of the work. TG that I mentioned, Texas Guaranteed, they developed the curriculum and did the training for us. So those partnerships are really valuable. But it is, as she mentioned, it's been the counselor's work in the past. That's not going away. I think another path is educating those teachers, giving them some tools, even just some resources to put in the back of their classroom with contact information for kids is a place to start.
And I would say most of our grant money has come also from our partnerships with the local college access networks. They're able to fund the printing of the posters, last year we handed out the wristbands to kids that said got money 2012 when they completed their FAFSA at the high school to try to promote internally that way. Those are things that we can't fund through the school district. It's those partnerships with your local nonprofits.
With all your hard work and effort, what were some of the barriers preventing students or parents from completing the FAFSA? What was your experience with that?
That's a huge barrier just because of the fact it's a huge proportion of our population. However, I think someone kind of hinted to the fact that while it won't be anywhere in writing, what we generally do is work with our families and some of our local colleges and do the process via hard copy as opposed to online, so there's not any jeopardy for those families. Likewise, I would guess in several of the communities, and this is really divulging secrets, but we also have another population of wonderful citizens who do not want to report income and will not complete the FAFSA as a result of that. So I think that's been one of our barriers, that we're really trying to work with some of the families to help them understand there are ways that we can guide them through the process and assist them, because there is a concern and fear about completing the FAFSA.
And we've talked a lot about the low-income family needs. The other challenge that we see in AISD is parents don't feel like they're going to qualify for any aid. And educating families on the reason to go on and fill out the FAFSA application anyway, even though you don't think you will qualify, is really important. And that's kind of the other end of the spectrum that we've had to address in AISD.
I think the undocumented kids are a big concern, and we were able to address it a little bit because we've got a community expert who, when those families came in, we had what we called our special circumstances room, and that would be for the counselors who were screening at the door. Those were our undocumented families went there, our unaccompanied youth went there, our homeless families went there. that type of thing, so that we staffed that area and tried to remove that barrier by saying we have experts that can help. It might not be your school counselor, but these folks can help you, and kind of funneled people there. And I think the other piece is getting the word out early enough about what families need, because so many of our families believe that they have to have filed their taxes before they file the FAFSA. And in Washington State, if you wait until that's done, then you would miss out on a lot of opportunities. So getting the word out that we're going to use the 2010 data and then go back and correct once you filed, that's another area that was a huge barrier.
Who developed your lessons for the economics classes, and are you willing to share them?
I think we'd love to share them. Texas Guaranteed worked with our counseling program specialists to align those with our standards and to put together some curriculum. So we did have some counselor input with that, and I haven't seen the finished product. I saw the preview a couple of months ago. It was really interactive. There's a script for the teacher, there's a help section, and I just thought it was wonderful. So we would love to share that.
Wanted to address the question that came from Lynchburg, and I'm guessing that there may be others in the room that have the same question that we did when we came to our very first meeting in January of 2011. There was no grant opportunity. There was not going to be any more money for us to implement this FAFSA completion program. And so what we had to do, I think, first of all, was to learn from the other 19 member districts who were in the pilot. And you'll have some unique opportunities here over the next day or so to do that. We took the beautiful pamphlet from Austin Independent School District about the Chamber of Commerce and the partnership between the Chamber of Commerce and the school system. We took that back to our chamber. They didn't speak to us for a while. But it showed them what was possible, especially in communities where you don't have a lot of resources or you're in a smaller community like we were. We had coffee with the Chamber of Commerce for about a year as they absorbed what we were doing. And what also became important in this was sweat equity. Take pictures, keep notes, get testimonials from your parents. You can leverage those resources into grant money at some point if you find that right board member or you find that right CEO in your community who wants to help. We got an email from one of the top CPAs in our community and the chamber 2 weeks ago who said, I have hired an intern to work in my office to do just work on the FAFSA completion project. We're going to sponsor a breakfast for all of the CPAs, accountants, and tax preparers in the community on November 1st. Just come and bring the information about FAFSA completion so we can get the rest of the folks in the cycle. So that kind of information from Austin was critical for us to show our Chamber of Commerce that this could be done, let them talk to each other, and then we've used those resources actually after 2.5, 3 years to actually get grants to continue this work. So thank you, Austin.